Thank you so much for coming in today. So my name is Emily. I'm our Director of Programs for 11th grade here at Attollo, and I'm so excited to have you for our professional development series today.
Thank you, Emily. Pleasure to be here.
So just to kind of get us started, we're going to run through some questions about you, about the work that you do, take some questions from the audience, and then I have some fun, silly questions that our students helped me come up with at the end.
Okay.
So just to kick us off, would you tell us a little bit about where you're from and some of your interests when you were growing up?
Yes, I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and grew up there. Family of 5 children, and I'm the middle child, so I think it explains some things. But a very loving and committed mother and father who are still working at being our mother and father, even though they're up in age now. So now it's our turn to take care of them. So that's what is happening quite a bit. And spent time in northeastern Pennsylvania, basically in education in my career, and moved here to Lancaster in 2008, where I took over as principal at Conestoga Valley High School.
Very nice.
And sort of got my roots here in Lancaster that way.
It's interesting you mentioned having your roots here in Lancaster start with Conestoga Valley. That was honestly my experience as well. My first recruit at Attollo was at CB. Oh, yeah. So I started right off the bat, 4:30 in the morning at that high school, which I love. It's the reason I have a little league pass to get into all the games at CB. Nice. But yeah, so I guess how did you find yourself on the path towards being a principal at Conestoga Valley? Because you mentioned being a principal at other schools before coming here. Yeah,
I think it's a great example of opportunities come in life and you might not know it. And I can connect to Attollo in that way. I was sort of a non-traditional way to education. I really thought my career would be in law enforcement. I had an uncle who was a classic FBI G-man, and I looked up to him quite a bit, and I thought, oh, I'd love to do that. And as I came of age as a young adult, at the time the FBI was really recruiting accountants and attorneys because white-collar crime was kind of an emphasis, and I didn't have the maturity and the guidance to really understand, well, what would it take to kind of move to that? I thought, well, police work would be the way to go, and at that time, the police academy was just lined up, had huge waiting lists. So one thing led to another. I came from a sports background, and coaching started to become part of my life. Played football, high school and college, and I had a brother who was actually an educator, and as I was finding that way through, would I go into law enforcement? I was actually a probation officer for a short amount of time in Allentown, and I was just a young man. I was only 22, and working with adult criminals and people who had a lot more experience than I did. And my brother sort of talked to me. He says, you really should think about education. He knew me as in some coaching. And that led me back, get my degree, and start teaching. So as I was a teacher at a very small school, I was kind of following my wife to where she was working in northeastern PA. And I had a mentor. I had someone come to me and say to me, he was actually the superintendent, he said, we see some things in you. We think you should get your degree. We think you can move into some other leadership roles. I'd never even thought about it. And he mentioned it to me, and that was one of those moments that put me on track to go and get my principal certificate and move forward. And other opportunities started to become available at that time, and I took on a principal position. I think I was a dean of students in there too. That's one of the things that was a part of that superintendent encouraging me. And 2 smaller schools. I was a principal there, and made our way here to Lancaster.
Wow. I think it's really cool how someone, whether you realized it or not, saw something in you, and you took that leap of faith and really said, I'll dive in.
Yeah. One of the most exhilarating parts of being a principal, I would say, in my last third of my career, was Attollo coming in, and we had some other programs that might be a little bit like this. But having our counselors and the administrators kind of looking at who are the potential students for Attollo, and then approaching those students and how someone noticed me, someone thinks that I have this talent, and they were unequivocal about it. They say, "Oh yeah, Emily, she's one." That's what they would say, or John, or Susan, or Emil. They would be they would really find that energy that comes from somebody recognizing them and saying, "You've got it." Now, as I would talk to Jordan as I was a principal about the program, I think Attollo emerged over years, and he really started to talk about leadership. And I think personally that those students who were chosen, who were recognized by others, it was because they had leadership qualities. And they may not have been able to articulate that right away. I believe we have a lot of latent leaders. The leadership is there, but it has to be sort of pulled out. Let them know you do have these capabilities. We can't always see that in ourselves. You need someone else who knows you and has experience with you to pull it out. And that's, to me, that's one of the great things about Attollo.
So a very full circle moment, being able to give back. And
I could relate to it. I really could,
So how and why did you go from being a principal at CB? You mentioned the last third of your career, you are getting to do what started your career, which is investing in our future leaders and mentors. How did you transition to working for the Clark Associates Charitable Foundation?
Well, part of it you'd have to say is COVID, because during COVID, the school district offered an early retirement incentive. And I had started as a principal fairly young, very early in my 30s. So, I had come home one day and said to my wife, "Well, they did offer an early retirement. I don't think I got the whole sentence out." And she said, "Take it." And, sometimes the principal job can be a little stressful. And she said, and I didn't want to retire from working, but you have an opportunity to do some other things, which I had talked about at different times. Had a couple of other opportunities, didn't take them. So actually there's a unforeseen, kind of unplanned situation. I did that, and at the same time as I was kind of transitioning at that time, the executive director of Clark Associates Charitable Foundation was retiring, and I had known that. And we already had a relationship with Clark. As you know, we're very close. We're just over the hill, and we had some mentorship programs with them, and we had some other speakers and so forth that had come in. And in fact, the CEO of Clark Associates is Gene Clark, the son of the founder, Fred Clark.
Yes.
And the president of the Webstront store is David Groff, and both Gene and David are CV graduates, and they are distinguished alumni. So when I was a principal, I brought them both in to speak to our student leaders.
That's awesome.
So we have all these connections, and I was fortunate enough to take over for the retiring executive director, and that's what I'm doing now.
I really appreciate how your story makes light of what was a very difficult time, and it still is like a repercussion of COVID. Very grateful that you are a part of the Clark Associates Charitable Foundation. I guess when you were making that decision, or when you and your wife were making that decision on whether or not to retire, did you find any overlap in the values that the Clark Association has with the values that you wanted to make sure you maintained from your life as a principal?
Yeah, most definitely. Community involvement is very important to me. Giving back is important to me. I sort of always knew I was going to be in the helping fields in some way. In fact, I can remember talking to my high school counselor, and the high school counselor had talked to me about some other things that were very technical. Aren't you interested in these things? And I think to a degree she might have been stereotyping me at the time. I was kind of maybe a bruising looking football kind of guy. And, oh, don't you want to do this or that? And I said, well, I actually think I'm going to be in the helping fields. I'm going to be in some way that way. And so that's what has really ended up in my career in one way or another. That's where I've been.
That's awesome. I guess something that I was looking into about the Clark Foundation, or the Clark Associates in general, is that it started as a really small family company with less than a dozen people working for them, and is now a multi-divisional company supporting the food service industries, employing nearly 7,000 people.
It's actually 8,333.
Ooh, that's a lot of people.
I just got that number the other day.
Wow. Yeah. That is more than that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. And it's across 36 states, like if not more at this point. And your association, the foundation, is supporting the communities wherever you have offices and warehouses,
Exactly.
is my understanding.
Yes.
So how do you make sure that you understand those communities?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So the company has a division called Employee Experience, and we call them the Employee Experience Team. And some people might say, well, are they sort of like human resources, HR, as you hear them said? Sort of a dirty word around our company. The leadership says, I don't want to hear human resources. They're much more than that. So they're really working with the communities and the employees on their needs. And we actually have one subgroup of that team that is called the Recruiting and Community Relations Manager. So they're both helping with the employment needs of that particular location.
Okay.
Most of them are distribution centers, what we might say are warehouses, and knowing the community and what are those charities that are doing high value work in the community that align to our values and our criteria. And so they're kind of my eyes and ears in those locations, although I've gone and visited a few of them. I've had a chance to do that. I'd like to get to all of them at some point. What our employees are involved in. So that's another one. They will basically poll those employees and say, you know, are you involved in a particular nonprofit that's working, and what kind of work are they doing? What's their mission? And that kind of gets us started.
So it's the idea of making sure that you have someone on the ground in the locations that you are present at.
That's right.
Not making the assumption that you know what's best for a community.
Correct.
Even if you're not there.
Correct. And I can work with them on ideas on how to look for them. What are some examples of nonprofits that really are found throughout the country that we're very interested in? Boys and Girls Club would be an example of one. The Salvation Army runs a number of programs like that. CASA, the court-appointed advocates for young people, it's really all over the country. So those are very important to us. We look for those, but people in need is our largest category. So there's no lacking in people in need. You can imagine any group of people that are in need of assistance, from veterans to low-income senior citizens, people in recovery. We do a lot of anti-trafficking work, people, victims of abuse, neglect, at-risk youth, huge for us. We're trying to break into programs for reentry from the criminal justice system, so looking for those type of nonprofits. And again, if our employees are involved, even more so.
Yeah, because you already have that buy-in from the group of people.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we were talking a little bit beforehand. I want to be honest with our audience.
Yeah.
And I mentioned how I'm originally from northern New Jersey.
Yeah.
Something that I really align with the Clark Association is when I moved to Lancaster, the first thing I did was try to find somewhere to volunteer. Because I think it's really important to give back to your community, even if you're not from that community.
Right.
Because now I'm living in it.
Right.
So I'm going to be gaining something from being here. My question for you is, as the executive director, how do you support local organizations in addition to their financial needs?
Well, volunteerism is very important to us. It's one of the criteria we look for in a nonprofit that we're going to financially support. We have a few exceptions to it, but one of the things we actually try to measure is how many hours of paid staff do you have versus how many hours of volunteer staff per month. It's one of the ways. Now, some nonprofits just aren't set up to have a lot of volunteers because of the nature of what they do. It could be a little more confidential, might need extra training, things like that. So we do understand that. But we really want to espouse volunteering among our employees. So we have an internal website, and many times I'm engaged with a nonprofit and I'll say to them, do you have opportunities for volunteerism, perhaps like a team activity? One of our divisions may want to do something like that. And they often do. So I'll give you an example, would be the food hub of Lancaster County right downtown. Well, they'll get pallets of food that has to be reorganized, it has to be And that's a great activity that a manager can say, hey, this is what we're doing today. We're going to go down for an afternoon and we're going to work there. Blessings of Hope would be another example here. Again, in the charitable food business, but there's many more.
I love that there's a focus for not only making sure that you are supporting the organization and the needs that they have, while also making sure that your team is gaining something from the experience, because that will encourage people to want to continue giving back.
Yeah.
Of which, thank you for your volunteer hours with Attollo. I know that you were a final interviewer for our recruits, and you're here today. Even most recently, Leo was telling me how you've connected us with some wonderful speakers for a future program that we're running this spring, which I'm very excited about.
Well, it's important to know one thing, when you work in the public sector like I have, in public education, and now the private sector, and how they are similar and how they are different. So one example would be Clark has a very deliberate hiring process. And hiring in the private world, really always you have to watch your bottom line. You have to watch how much, because it's very expensive for anyone. The number one expense generally gets to be staffing and your employees. They hire about 2% of everyone who applies to the company. And we have thousands and thousands of people who apply. One of the top schools that apply with us is Penn State. Not hard to believe, because Penn State has a supply chain major. And we are a major distribution company. So that's moving goods back and forth through warehouses and getting them out to people. I always say, much like Amazon. How does Amazon do it? They have warehouses all over the country. They have their own transportation. They have a system for getting that good to you as soon as possible. Well, we try to do the same, so we need majors like that. And literally there'll be over, I think I saw last year, it may have been close to 2,800 applications from Penn State alone.
Wow.
So when you think of that's just coming from one school, and a very good school, they're still only hiring 2% of who applies. So that means they're very discerning, a very discerning eye. They want quality people. In that, to me, I'm not saying that we didn't, in the same breath, that we didn't hire to a high scrutiny in school, but I can see the difference in how they're breaking down what they need, what are the skills of the person, much more specialized in many ways. So kind of eye-opening.
It's sounding very similar to the college application process, where you're not just looking for the skills that are relevant to the job, but also a well-rounded individual that can contribute to the other important values of the organization.
Absolutely.
So given that we have some scholars and alumni in the room, what opportunities would you suggest for a current high schooler or a college student who might be interested in working for the Clark Association? How can they start preparing, especially seeing as how you're describing the application process is very relevant to other jobs. It's not just specific to Clark. I'm curious, how are there opportunities to get involved early on, internships, that kind of stuff?
There's a very organized internship program, generally runs through colleges. We have college partnerships with many of the local colleges that are here, but also Penn State, Pitt would be another one that would be a little further. But basically in this area of, I would say, the Mid-Atlantic and Pennsylvania, some New York schools, New Jersey schools. Pennsylvania has a lot of colleges. Yes. We have quite a few to choose from. And what Clark is based in so much is online. So you go to the website and go to the employment tab and put an application in and explain, I'm interested in becoming an intern. If you might know someone from Clark Associates and they suggested you might interview, I would name them, I would put them down. And we have a recruitment department, basically. I think they may call themselves a division, that really is using, they're actually starting to use AI tools now to review those, really looking at specific items that they're looking for, how to get those applications rather than the time it needs to read through every one. What are some prerequisites that they want to see? and making sure you leave nothing out. Making sure you have full resumes, really articulating your experiences, your interests, any specialized training you've had, or other experiences in college that have helped you move, and your own personal work experience.
I see more so now how you were essentially like recruited to be into this position because you have that experience at Conestoga Valley and the other high schools. You have the lived experience of being in the education field, very philanthropic by nature. I think when you're working in education, you have a conviction to give back to your community. And so I see how that really prepared you to now oversee the Charitable Foundation.
I think so. Doesn't hurt when you know someone.
That too.
I mean, that's part of life.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with money and you're dealing with things, you need to be able to trust the people that you have. Do they have a background that you feel can, work through, learning something new and moving forward? But having other community contacts really helps too. And I can say the network of nonprofits here in this area, it is rich. It is this is a giving community, more than most people realize.
Yeah.
And it's been a part of our heritage really here in Lancaster area. So. Very, very fortunate to be a part of that, and you get to learn from those other nonprofits. And everyone has a different criteria, what their mission is. Many of them are similar, but oftentimes there are specifics that they are looking for, and you see how they go about that, how they raise their money. We're a private foundation, so the companies of Clark Associates, there might be as many as 15 now.
Wow.
Generally are contributing each year a percentage of their profits to the foundation. So aside from one fundraiser we have, which is a significant one, Derby Day,
the Derby, yep,
which coincides with the Kentucky Derby, we basically are a private foundation funded by our companies.
Okay, so it's a combination of intentional fundraising as well as the companies pouring back in.
It's hard to say intentional fundraising because I feel that almost gives a misrepresentation of ours versus others, because other foundations, other nonprofits, fundraising is a big part of what they have to do.
That's true.
And it's just a reality. You have to get partners. You have to coordinate events. But really, the money comes from partnerships and people that believe in your mission. So you have to have that mission articulated very well, and network, and continue to find those sources. Some in the nonprofit world, I have found out, have degrees in fundraising. So that's what they do. I have a sister-in-law who is a director of a foundation for a hospital, and virtually 80% of her time is raising money. It's not, it raises money for the hospital. So the idea of finding other nonprofits to help isn't a big issue, but fundraising is number one.
Mike, you've touched on this very important concept that I think we're starting to introduce to our students the importance of early on, which is networking and staying involved. And, I mean, this is a theme of our conversation. How do you lead by example and remain involved in your community?
How do you lead by example? It was easy to do as a principal because you really had to be present. That was one of the most important things, and I would say to almost anyone, especially as you move into management of people, you really have to be present. You have to be aware. I forget the exact quote, but what percentage of success is just showing up? Well, it's a very high one. If you are a principal and you stay in your office and you're not seen, and you're not in the cafeteria, you don't see everybody in the morning, you're not in the hallways, you're not stopping into classrooms, you will not be as strong of a leader. They will not perceive you as that, and they won't get to know you either. You'll just be a position. I would say probably anyone who sees our interview has an experience, and I say this is sort of an experience that teachers have. Everybody's an expert on them. Why? Well, you've had 12 years to observe them. Tell me another profession you've had 12 years to observe them. Even though you're a child growing into a young adult, you don't really have that. You don't see 12 years of plumbers or 12 years of attorneys or 12, unless they're your parents, you really don't have that experience. So I would venture to say everyone has this image of a principal. I'm sometimes shocked that people can't even name their principal.
Really?
Which does tell you things at times.
Yeah.
They can't name the principal because they never see them. Could have a very large school. Some schools are very large, and a larger school is harder to run, and you will get bogged down in things that might interfere with you being present and being out there. I was lucky enough to be at schools that I never thought were that big. Conestoga Valley was a larger school, but sort of a smaller on the scale of larger schools. But you would go here locally, you could look at, obviously the school district of Lancaster is the largest, but Hempfield is a local school district here that might have 20, maybe 500 graduates a class, maybe they're 2,400 in their school. So I might have forgotten the question.
I guess, it was,
how do
you continue to stay involved, especially in your current role? I mean, it sounds like you led by example as a principal by taking the time to be observant in what has worked and maybe didn't work as much as from your experience being a student, and showing up and being present. But now that you're in a private sector, how do you continue to lead by example for your team? Yeah,
I'm on a few board of directors for different nonprofits. I actually was asked to run for township supervisor after I retired because no one else was running. And I was saying, well, why doesn't anyone else want to run? Because it's a 6-year term and people don't want to spend that much time doing it. So I took that on 3 years ago.
Wow.
To me, where I live in our township is East Lampeter Township. And to me, it's been wonderful to my family. My children raised here, as older grade school students through high school and graduated from high school from Conestoga Valley, and have really found success after that in college and beyond, and have now moved on. But I think it's a great community. It's a very diverse community with multiple spheres, from commercial to farming to traditional Lancaster County suburbs. To vibrant business community. So, not shy. I just think it's part of my nature to want to be involved in those things. Where can I help? What are the skills that I have that could possibly help? You have to worry about overextending. You do get asked to do a lot of things. I've been guilty of that, where I should say no. That's where your spouse comes in. They have to give you some guidance on that.
What are some, tips and tricks that you have found in making sure that you're finding that balance? Because I too sometimes overextend myself.
Yeah. Knowing yourself is probably one of the things that you can draw on to help make that decision. What do you need to really be able to connect to things that are important to you? Maybe your creative side, maybe those things that you do enjoy and that you're balancing those out. I'm always struck with, I'm a real fan of Abraham Lincoln and reading about him and the nuances of it. And there's no lack of books about Abraham Lincoln. But during one of the most horrible and heart-wrenching times of our country during the Civil War, he knew that he had to provide for himself some balance. And he would continue to go to the theater and read. He was a voracious reader, genius man. And some people criticize him. How could you do that, knowing, here's all these men, wounded, dying in battle, and he knew that he had to do it just to keep balance. So knowing yourself is important. There's an extreme example of it, but and trying to keep yourself healthy. I enjoy, physical thing, working out and things like that, but getting to the outdoors, very important. I like to do more of that as I'm into this phase of my life.
What are some other ways that you continue to work on yourself and improve as a leader? And I pour back into yourself.
Well, one of the things, I'm lucky to work for this company because they're really investing in that. Yesterday, the company had a leadership conference here in Lancaster and really are talking about you as a leader and what are those things. Can you have the frank, honest discussions with your immediate report and yourself to know? And there was a very strong piece of that yesterday, to be honest, very honest about yourself. In fact, they were examining empowerment and engagement. And does a leader have low empowerment, low engagement, or high on either side? And they looked at that in a sort of XY axis, or what quadrant are you in? That was very informative. So there's a chance, many times in the business world we call it professional development, but that's really what you need to do. You need to sharpen the saw, as it's called in the highly effective habits of people. You need to sharpen that saw. If you don't, you run the risk of being complacent, of kind of falling into the familiar without testing yourself and challenging yourself. So I think it's important. As you get older, it's a little harder to do that, but you have to be humble enough to do that. And that's also a quality that you need. You're never finished, always continuing to grow and learn. And I was at that conference yesterday, and there's so many technical terms that they say so easily because they're in it every day.
Yeah.
It would be as if I was talking about a whole number of educational terms or even laws that we had to follow, and here's a group of people that have never worked in an educational environment. They would not know what I was talking about. So it's hard when you sit around me at those conferences because I'm constantly asking the person next, what does that stand for? What is that? But fascinating, you're learning new things.
It's very clear that you continue to remain in a growth mindset, even in this stage in your career, which I really appreciate as well.
Yeah, very important, growth mindset.
So Attollo has 6 core pillars that our students and staff strive to live each day.
Yes.
And Clark Associates also has core values. They have 12 core values, so double what we have. And they are, correct me if I'm wrong, discipline, work ethic, grit, humility, frugality, competition stewardship and giving back, adaptability and innovation, critical thinking, radical candor, extreme ownership, and entrepreneurial risk. Which of these 12 do you connect with the most? And I would appreciate if you don't necessarily speak on stewardship and giving back, because I saw the Instagram reel in which you touched on that already.
Okay. Well, that's my job, that one.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think you could almost glean from those, there really is a feeling at the company. They don't want to lose the small company feel as it grows, as they get to 8,000 plus employees.
Yeah.
So how do they do that? Well, one of the ways they do it is to have the kind of conference they did yesterday. And there was radical candor there. There was some real critical things that they were saying. And if you could imagine it, sitting, a few hundred people in an auditorium at the Ware Center, beautiful facility, on a big screen, there's names. And they're looking at, you may have too many people in your department. And who are they? Well, it's highlighted in red. I mean, that's not something that would happen at many other places. That, let's say the word candor, but being, in terms of not, taking risks, but calculated risks. They really do, you can't hide behind the fact that there are some tough decisions, tough questions that lead to tough decisions that have to be made. So you're really staying with what the company is all about. One of the things they'll always tell you at our company is any decision you want to make has to have an ROI. ROI, return on investment. So all businesses, when you're trying to control costs, you're always saying, well, if we're going to do something and it's going to cost a lot of money, then you have to tell me how in the end there's going to be a return on that investment. You don't want to just spend money for no reason. You spend money and you may even borrow money so that later it's going to have benefit for you. So the accountability is very high, but the support is high too. But they do expect you to have the plan worked out before you move into those areas. And what does it take? It takes discipline. It takes critical thinking. It is about collaboration and working together as teams. Teams are very important at Clark Associates and their companies. And it's so refreshing to see it. A little difference with schools would be not everyone at school thinks ROI in that way, which the investment would be, how's this improving learning? Sometimes it's easier to get into a routine. Oh, I can't choose the inputs if I'm a teacher, and meaning the students. I can't choose what kind of backgrounds they had. Did they have supportive parents? Pardon me. Did they have, was there constant reading in their home? Were all those things? And that's sort of the magic and the challenge of education. And I would tell that sometimes to my coworkers at Clark Associates now. I would say, well, here's one main difference. You can go and choose 2% of the people that work here, and you can choose the products you're going to buy and where you're going to buy them from, but you can't do that in public education. I mean, that's a significant difference.
Do you find, and this is my last question before we open it up to the group, do you find any of these values and principles bleeding into your personal life?
I would say they do. Maybe not as conscious of it now because I'm not every day having children in front of me. I mean, when you have your children living with you, I think you certainly should be very intentional about what you want to teach them, but it's sort of on your mind automatically. So now it's sort of more on the community side, and what else can I bring to this table, and how can I support this particular entity? I'm involved with a charity in Lancaster that has a fatherhood program, and I feel very strongly about supporting fathers and making sure that we're doing whatever we can to empower them, to support them, to know that people are out there rooting for them, and we need them. They're essential, and it's been very successful. So I'd like to say some of the things that both my education career and Clark Associates I can bring to that and help them with it. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do want to make some space for any audience questions. Yeah, Leo.
Earlier, you kind of alluded to Five Habits of Highly Effective Leaders.
Yes.
Was the book.
Yes.
Are there any other books or podcasts or things that you consume
Yeah.
that you just recommend for young professionals?
Sure.
Or leaders?
Sure. Yeah. We had a little discussion on this, a pre-discussion, but I do believe in the growth mindset. I believe in Carol Dweck's. She has a series of books and trainings. There's an offshoot of that called Train Ugly. I think it's called Train Ugly. And Trevor Reagan is the individual's name, R-A-G-A-N. And we actually brought that training to Conestoga Valley at one point and brought him in as a speaker. He's outstanding. But it's really about learning, coming from risk. Again, very big Clark. They're all about that. I mean, let's try an idea, and it might not work, but show me the details of why you think it will, and let's get some other people on that, collaborate. And I think it just has so much application to young people today. Many people will tell you that the interpersonal skills of young people have really taken a deep dive in the last 15 years, and many would say it is because of our ability to dive into technology and not engage with other people. So I do think that the growth mindset really means you've got to push out. You've got to do some things that stretch your talents and your abilities, and not knowing the answer to something sometimes is a key opening door to learning new things, and not to be afraid of that. It's difficult to do that. It's not pleasant when you're running into challenging situations, maybe pressured, maybe opinions that aren't like yours, or maybe not the most popular. But it is really the way to cement learning. And when I talk to some people that have been through some very difficult things, and they still tell you, I wouldn't have done it any other way. It's amazing. In my own family, my mother's older brother was killed in World War II. He was significantly older than her. She was just a child at the time. And it changed their whole family. It impacted who my mother was, which I think impacted who I am, because she really had to grow up taking care of her own parents in a way. She had a special needs brother, and that there's the legacy of a situation like that. That to me was like a growth mindset. It was, you could kind of cocoon in and let that sadness and that tragedy overcome you. And there are so many stories, that you could equally say, are tragic for individuals, and trying to say which one is worse than another or something like that. It's not really about that. It's about, how will you respond? What can you take from that? You can't deny the hurt sometimes and the way it's impacted you, but, to know a growth mindset means, someday there may be something I really know that I learned from this. I can't see it right now. Mm-hmm. That's a leap of faith, but it's also an important part of growth mindset. I may not be able to know. I can't possibly see how this could help me someday. But, the history of the world is about a lot of bad things that happen, and yet we still go forward. Mm-hmm. So how does that happen?
Mm. Can you speak to some of the traits that you think that superintendent saw in you that made them recommend you go get this extra credential to become a principal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I thought about it at the time too, and I wasn't consciously doing it. I can honestly say I wasn't even saying to myself, I think someday I'll be a principal. Like, I never thought of that. Now, I go back to sports, and I go back to why was I elected a captain? I don't know. I never asked to be a captain. So I think part of it was, and I see this in my own siblings, when there's something that needs to be done and you have an inclination that you could do something about it, we do something. We say something. We do it. I actually, again, connect with Attollo in that way, because I think that's what the people who chose the Attollo students, the Attollo prep students, I believe they saw that. There's something, and when you are in, I used to say this with my school leaders in school, there's something inside you that's a twitch, like something's happening and you feel like you can impact it. And you are sort of compelled to do something about it. That's a sign. Now, I know that now, but that's a sign that's a talent you cannot waste. You have a responsibility to do something. Not everyone is a leader. Some people are great followers. And, the old adage, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, that is absolutely, and some people are awesomely, and they'll want, there's a certain amount of leadership that comes out almost in every situation. One of the ones that I've heard explained, John Maxwell, I think, explained this one. You go to dinner, and here comes the waitress, and you look up at her and you say, well, what's good? What do you recommend? All eyes on the waitress, listening to everything they're saying. That's a moment sort of leadership. And we can all have those moments. So I think that was what that superintendent's, and I think it was problem solving. Something's going on in the school and we should do it this way. Oh, I think I can give you an even better example. There was an assistant principal at that time, and I moved to this new school to become a teacher. Again, I was sort of getting a location where my wife and I could be together. We hadn't been married yet, but we were trying to be together so we could get married. And I was critical of the assistant principal. Now, I came off, I could say, being a hotshot football coach and, direct and get it done. And the assistant superintendent had come to me and said, well, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And she took me aback. What's coming here? And she said, well, we're going to create a new position called a dean of students. And there was some behavior problems in the school. And we'd like you to take that position on. And she reminded me, we realize that there's some things you'd like to have done differently here. So, and she got me. I will say, to this day, Charlotte Slocum was her name. And she got me. And I could not say no. At that point, she put your money where your mouth is. And I think she knew, I'm going to challenge him. I'm going to touch on his ego, and he'll do it. And I did. And then that led to different decision-making, problem-solving became something I really enjoyed doing. When I was first a principal, there was so much happening every day. It was constant problem-solving. I took over at a school that had 5 principals in 4 years. So they were really using it as a revolving door of that position, and that happens sometimes in schools. And it was a real challenge, but it was one of the most fulfilling things I'd ever done to get that school organized and to bring order to it, and to really, the teachers were happy about what was going on. And so, you know, it was quite an accomplishment, I felt, to get that under control. It took some time. You know, I was there for about 8 years, and it couldn't happen in the first few years, but eventually did. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more question. Yeah.
Here at Attollo, we have different filters that we run like decisions by. Like the biggest one being, how does this affect our students, right? So I'm curious to know if either in your personal life or within your role in the Clark Associates Charitable Foundation, what filters do you run most of your decisions by?
ROI has affected me, so that's a bit of what you're talking about, I believe. I don't know that I was always thinking of that. I think there was something that was, after you get a certain amount of experience, there's an intuition you have about certain things. Is that going to really get us where we need to go? How is it impacting students? And I've had a few administrators that I reported to that were very good at asking that question of me. So it was really about the people. How is this going to impact, you know, if you're a school, it should be about learning and the positive experience that students have. So positive culture in a school, just like a business, is extremely important to do the business of whatever it is you do, whether it's teaching and learning or whether it's, you know, being the country's #1 food supply equipment online, you know, company, which we are actually. So if you can imagine, you know, million with an M versus billion. So last year, just that company alone, Webstaurant Store, in gross sales was $4 billion. So, and that's essentially restaurants, you know, and institutions that have a cafeteria. So you have a little canteen I see over here, and a lot of that equipment would be also equipment that we would sell. We don't really sell retail as much as we are, you know, commercial, the commercial equipment you need and things like that. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of restaurants in this country and some areas that are really full of them, like Lancaster. We just opened another restaurant store, which is called The Restaurant Store in Florida, near Orlando, and it's doing very well. Now there's another company there, Restaurant Depot, which is very, very much established there, but we've come right in to say, well, we'd like to compete. So.
Real quick though, to build on that, so you talked about the scale of that business, and then obviously the charitable arm of it, a lot of the resources come from those businesses.
Absolutely.
Can you just speak about the scope of philanthropy that?
Yeah, sure. Well, we advertise it. We're getting close to $7 million a year that we give out. Probably, I would say $4 million of that is Lancaster County area in that segment. I think I mentioned before, people in need is our largest category, so that would be our largest bucket, and several million in that. Youth education is next, innovative youth education, so we support a lot of the education foundations of this area, but others also. And then youth programs in music and the arts. The Clark family are very, very much musicians. You might see our CEO, Gene Clark, he still plays the trumpet for a number of different brass bands and so forth. You might see his picture every once in a while. Suddenly, the British brass band is going to play, you know, for this, and you'll just see him standing there holding this, and he's the CEO of this massive company.
I love it.
But again, that's a part of the balance that he has to maintain that. They would like to produce that. We certainly believe in sports. We believe in youth sports. We think they're really good, but we don't include those in our giving guidelines. And partly that's because sports are so important in this country that they usually find money. As a principal, I used to say, it's news, weather, and sports several times a day. That's how important sports are. It's not news, weather in English class, news, weather in science. I mean, you just have, it's a reality. I mean, I'd say it half in jest, but it's important to us. So, you know, generally we have funding for it, obviously in schools. And one of the great things about schools, I believe in the modern era, is that they've really strived to have something for everyone. So now we have robotics teams, esports teams, every kind of music you can imagine, tech teams, TSA, Technology Students Association. So you you really do try and expand that so you touch on a student's interest, which oftentimes is another way to get a caring adult in their life every day, which is what students need every day, a caring adult somehow, some way with them.
And touching on the extent that the Clark Associates Charitable Foundation has had on your communities, it's not just nearly $7 million, that's across nearly 700 different charitable organizations.
Yeah.
You're really contributing to a huge population of people,
Yes.
which I think is really, really special.
Yes.
Not just closing in on a handful that are
Yes.
important to, high executives in your organization.
And thank you for reminding me. We have to update our numbers on the website.
What's the new number?
It's probably close to 1,000
Wow.
organizations now. But it really increased the last 4 or 5 years. We've really gone forward. We started an employee grant program where an employee can, for any charity that they believe in, as long as it roughly connects, not quite as stringent on the criteria as our general grant, but they can apply for a few $100s for that organization. And we allow them to combine them. So what that's done is it's increased the number of organizations that we're connecting with, and it also has employees sharing that information with others. People get busy in their days. Not everybody can volunteer, but they say, hey, I have this great organization that's helping families and survivors of cancer. There's a lot of those organizations. We support quite a few of those. Here's a new program, be like the Benchmark program downtown here in Lancaster. They came and did a presentation, a lunch and learn with our staff, and all kinds of employees got turned on to it. In fact, we have 2 employees that are volunteering with them regularly.
I love that.
Now, so we actually give more money to the nonprofit if our employee in their name is volunteering with them. So again, trying to really support volunteerism among our employees, giving back.
And there's that return on investment for the employee.
Yes.
Giving their time, investing
Yes.
in their community also means that their organization will invest
Yes.
in them as well.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So we would get, we're well over 300, maybe 350 last year of employee grant requests. So they're all for different nonprofits. I mean, some might be some that we've supported in the past, but many of them are, their particular interest area, and it's all over the country. So there's many that you might not hear about in Lancaster, but they're in other places.
Awesome. Well, to close us out, I've got some rapid fire questions. There is one that I will pause on because I wrote down who I think the answer would be. And I'm curious if I aligned. Are you ready, Mike?
I'm ready.
All right. What is your ultimate pump up song? Like your hype song?
Oh, hype song.
First thing that comes to mind.
Wow. I used to listen to a number of songs before a football game that would hype me up. So that would be, I was a ZZ Top fan back in the day. So some of those songs would. I'm a Johnny Cash fan too. So could I pick one?
Just one.
I'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay. One thing you're grateful for.
My family.
All right, this is the one that I think I have an answer for. If you could have dinner with any celebrity, who would it be? Or famous person? Dead or alive?
Oh, dead or alive? The Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, I wrote that one down if anyone needs to see. Beach vacation or city adventure?
The other person would be Teddy Roosevelt.
Ooh, there's a theme there.
I'd like to read about Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
Maybe we'll make it a dinner party then.
Okay.
Beach vacation or city adventure?
Beach.
Dream car?
I guess a Cadillac Escalade.
Oh, sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
If you won the lottery, what is the first thing you would do?
There's some family needs I'd take care of right away.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Favorite day of the week?
I'd say Friday.
Morning or evening person?
When you're a principal, you're both. So I learned to be both. Evening, I would say probably, I I am not like a go to sleep early type person. So
Okay.
yeah.
And now going back, I'm not going to let you escape it. What is that ultimate pump up song?
The pump up song. Sharp Dressed Man.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking some
Thank
time
you.
out of your day to speak
It's always
with us.
great to visit with Attollo and speak with you. And this is very special, so I'm honored to do it.
Thank you. I would love to end with a quote from Fred Clark that I saw that you shared online, which is, when you have more than you need, there's always someone out there who needs it more than you. And I
Yeah.
think that really ties into the work that you do and the work that we do here at Attollo.
We'll give full credit for that. That's his father, Lloyd. And he
okay.
shared that. He kept that in his mind his whole life. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Emily.